Hello everyone and welcome back to jQuery lessons on Codecademy. So in the last lesson we started looking at functions. In this lesson we're still going to be looking at functions but a bit more advanced. We're probably going to be looking at functions in the next lesson as well, looking at the course specification kind of thing. So let's get started then. So in this we're going to be looking at how we can use functions to select specific HTML elements. So now that we know more about how functions work, which we did in the last lesson, and I recommend you watch that if you haven't, you understand that when we have something like this, which is something like $document.ready function and then $div.hide, we're passing .ready, a function which itself takes no inputs. That's why the parentheses are empty, and that function's job is to hide the div jQuery object. So we have this is what it's talking about when this function is empty. It takes no arguments and it hides the div object. In this case it's actually all div objects, and we might not want that, which is why we will want to select a specific div object in this case. So let's see how we can do that. So what we need to do in this section is give .ready, so that's going to be in here, a function as an input inside your function parenthesis curly braces call fade in slow on the currently invisible div to bring it to new view. Into view, sorry. That's right, there's a fade in as well. So that should be quite easy. I can just copy this over, and instead of hide I can do fade in, and let's make sure I get the capitalization correct, and I want slow in there. So let's see full screen, and as you can see, hopefully it fades in slowly. I honestly hope that that's noticeable on the video. Let's save and submit, and that is correct. So just try it out. If you can't notice it on the video, you will notice that it actually is fading in slowly. Well, as slowly as slow allows. I can actually make it a bit slower. As you can see, now it's a lot more noticeable. So hopefully that helps. Let's do Ctrl Z, save and submit, and move on. Selecting by class. So we don't have to limit ourselves to selecting HTML elements like paragraph and div. Essentially we can put any CSS selector in quotes and pass it into that, the $ parentheses. So this means we can select classes too. So you can probably also select IDs, which is very useful because you might not want to vanish all divs but just a specific div, so you can give it a specific class or ID and just target that one specific class or ID. So recall that we can select classes in CSS by using a dot, full stop, whatever you want to call it, or period, I don't know. If we have class equals red in our HTML, we can target it in CSS with .red. In jQuery, all we need to do is put the .red in quotation marks, and we can pass it to the $ parentheses to make a jQuery object. The $ parentheses is also a function, as we learned in the last lesson. So instructions. Let's put some practice with the click action. So finish the jQuery code, so that should be in here, so that it will make all 4 divs of class .vanish fade out slowly when the button is clicked. Right. So we have button function .click, so we want when this is clicked, that should be fine. And what do we want to do when it is clicked? We want to make these vanish slowly. So we need to use the $, which is right here, and the dot, quotation marks, dot and vanish. Yep, vanish, and we want to fade them out. Fade out, if I'm correct. There we go, and that needs to be slowly. And we need a semicolon there. I don't think it's going to work. Yep, so now we need to find the button, and the button is just literally called a button. So we want to put that in here and put button. So when we click it, as you saw there, they faded out slowly, maybe. So let's try that again. Click me, as you can see, they faded out again. And we can move on. If you guys have any questions about any of these, then do feel free to ask in the comments down below. So selecting by ID. If we can select by class, it follows that we can also select by ID. We do this by putting the ID name in quotes or quotation marks inside the USD sign function thing. I'll just call it inside the this from now on because it's just too long to call it anything else. Just as we need the dot for classes, we need the sharp sign or pound for IDs. We could target ID equals header like so. So if header is the ID of something, this is how you would target it, with a pound header. The semicolon at the end is important. It's how jQuery knows we're done giving it a command. So for now, a good rule of thumb is that you put semicolons at the end of any line that does not end with an open curly brace. The editor will try to help you out with your semicolon placement, so pay attention to its warnings. Examples of correct and incorrect semicolons used are in the hint. Okay, I guess we can look at the hint then. So as you can see, here you use a semicolon. After the curly brace, there is no semicolon. Wherever you put the, if you put the curly brace here, so let's actually copy this. I'm copying it just to give an example here. So if we do this, and if we put the curly brace here, we still do not put a semicolon there, because we have a curly brace after that. So don't make the mistake of doing that. Also, you could even separate that out. You still don't put a curly brace there. You do, however, put a curly brace, a semicolon there, sorry, and you don't put a semicolon there, although it's after a closing curly brace. You can separate brackets like this here, and some people prefer to have separated brackets like this. And it depends on how someone is coding. I do myself prefer to keep it this way. And I don't put, you never put semicolons after an open curly brace to my knowledge. So just keep that as in your mind. And remember to put semicolons because they are usually a big place of error, especially for me for some reason. Okay, let's look at the instructions. So update your jQuery code so that it only fade out the div with the ID blue. So we want this and blue. Dot fade out slow. And if we save and submit, click me, we should notice the cyan, in my opinion, not really blue, button fade out. There we go. And those shift backwards because that's how divs work. We haven't changed their their interactivity, I guess. Flexible selections. Anything you can target with CSS, you can modify with jQuery. So for example, we can apply a fade to a P selector like this. So we have a paragraph and we have fade to, slow, and something 0. We can comma 0. We can apply a fade to an LI selector like this. We can apply a fade to both the P and LI selectors like this. So if you put a comma between them, inside the quotation marks you can select both of them. That's quite interesting, and otherwise you would be required to make 2 lines to do this. So this is quite useful. This is called a compound selector, although this might confuse your code a bit, so sometimes maybe doing it on 2 separate lines might be better for visual representation of code. So let's use a compound selector to apply a fade to both the pink and red selectors. So that's going to be in script.js. So let's use a compound selector to apply a fade to both the pink and red selectors. Does it actually want, yeah, we probably need to type out the other code as well, so I'll be right back once I've done that. So now that I have this code, what we need to do is basically just apply this to pink and red, to the classes pink and red. So what you can do is copy that over, and instead of P and LI you can put dot red and dot pink. Let's see. and as you saw there, they faded out. And if we save and submit code, again they fade out. If we go back, we can move on to the next lesson, which means that we have done it correctly. So let's move on. This is important. Now this might be a bit confusing, so please pay attention. So in the last lesson we had some code that looked like this. So we have document.ready function, when mouse enter function, then hide div, for example. The second line is good. This tells us that when the mouse into a div, we should take a certain action. However, div.hide won't just hide the div you mouse into. It will hide all the divs on the page. How can we tell jQuery we only want to affect this particular div? Well, with this, of course. The this keyword refers to the jQuery object you're currently doing something with. So its complete rules are a little tricky, but the important thing to understand is if you use an event handler on an element, that's the fancy name for actions like .click and .mouseEnter. Since they handle jQuery events, you can call the actual event that occurs, such as fade out on this, and the event will only affect the element you're currently doing something with, for example clicking on or mousing over. So you won't really want to have a separate class for every single div, because a page can contain, I don't know, 20, 50, 20, 30, 40 or maybe even 50 div elements, and you don't want to put a different class for every one of them. And you can't really, even if you did that, you would never know where the user's mouse is hovering over. So say I was hovering over this one, how would you know that I'm hovering over, say if that one was called cyan not blue square, I don't know, for some whatever reason, how would you know I'm hovering over that? This is where you use the this keyword, and it's very useful. So check out the code in script.js. Instead of using fade out on all divs, so let's see, on all divs, we're just using it on this div, as you can see here, where this refers to the div you're clicking on. So click save and submit code, then click on your divs one by one to see it work. So let's save and submit code, and let's put full screen. So I will do it separately, so I will click this one. As you can see, that one started to fade out. If I click this one starts to fade out, then this one, then this one. Just to prove that I'm not playing any trickery here, I will do it again, in a different order. As you can see, they disappear differently. I'm not changing any of the code, ever. I don't know what I did before, but now I'm going to do that. And I'm not changing any of the code, but they disappear in different order, and the order is in which I click them in. So if you guys have any questions about this video, about any of the other videos, then please post a comment. Anything, just ask. I will try my best to answer it. If I can't answer it, I will look it up on Google and give you the answer I got from there. But other than that, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, whatever you do. If you didn't like it though, please give me a dislike and tell me in the comments how I can improve for next time. But until that next time, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and goodbye.